Okay, welcome back, dear viewers. Today I'm going to do video 2 in my deep dive into the Walking Dead Universe RPG. Going to talk about running the game, and then I think the final video, video 3, will be about the campaign setup because the book goes into some interesting rules on that, and it's actually got some good advice in it too, which I appreciate. So let's jump into this. All right, so running the game, we still have, like I talked about in the last um, video, issues with abstraction, we'll say. And you're going to see, I'll make some commentary as I go through about it, but it all revolves around what really this game is about. I kind of talked briefly about it in the first video, and I think in the third video with campaign setup, I'll go into more detail. But basically, what the PCs your players are going to encounter are challenges, and those challenges are derived from issues. But those challenges are the things the players are going to have to contend with, and a challenge can be just about anything. Um, a challenge can result from messing up on a roll, but it can also more often be just GM fiat. What makes sense for the story? This is the story game part of this. Some of you may be comfortable with it. Some of you might not. Um, I'm kind of on the fence. Like I said, my home in-person crew doesn't seem to mind it. We had a lot of fun when we played our first session. Waiting to play our second session, which will be in a couple of weeks. So but anyway, that's the heart of the game, right there. Challenges and issues, and the rules contained in the book are there to sort of help you resolve these challenges. It is a little weird because this game also contemplates a type of hex crawl, which I don't consider a story gamey thing. And there's procedures. You usually tick the boxes off when you're running a game, and Forbidden Lands by Free League actually has a hex crawl procedure sort of lined out or laid out for you, which this game does not. But I'll talk about that in the next video. Um, so, major part of some of these rules are the combat. Obviously, that's a lot. Conflict happens, right? And the game kind of splits it into two types of combat. You have duels and brawls. Duels, again, kind of abstract, is really more about, I think, when you have like a PC and an NPC finally, whatever conflict they have, whatever issues they may have with each other, finally boils over and they start fighting. Um, you know, and for dramatic effect, right? So, um, and it's really simple. It's like an opposed roll, depending on what you're using. Close combat or ranged. Weapon bonuses apply, and other PCs can help and assist by adding a die to the roll. And there are four outcomes. You have if both sides have the same number of successes, both parties are taking damage. If one participant succeeds, only the victor deals damage. If that victor has two or more successes, they do an extra point of damage per success above the first. And if neither side gets a success, no damage is dealt. Um, there are only three ranged bands in combat, both for duels and brawls. Short is like up to 25 meters, and that's what you use for close combat. Long, 25 to 100 meters, and that's where you have to use ranged combat. And then there's extreme, which I guess requires special like gear for. Um, Cover is simply adjudicated as requiring a ranged attack to have one additional success to succeed. So when you're doing, if two in a duel, two people are shooting at each other and they're both behind cover, you would roll, take a look at your successes, subtract one success, and then compare your dice pools. Um, you get no cover from close combat, obviously. Now, there's an interesting uh, rule here about defenseless targets. There's no opposed roll. You're just shooting at them. using your ranged attack, or if you're sneaking up on him to punch him. Um, so this sort of conceptually contemplates like the duel is that confrontation, that challenge. Like you're gonna fight this guy, right? And yeah, yeah. So it's not really a combat system in my mind. It's a skill check, just referred to as a duel. Okay, and it's a skill check that's a little bit more involved. As you can see, there's other things you can do rather than attacking the person. You can try to run away using a mobility check. Um, if there's multiple combatants, like two guys are teaming up on one, the lone individual chooses who he's going to do the opposed roll with, and the person who's not engaged in an opposed roll rolls as if it's a defenseless person, a defenseless target. And then, of course, if you mess up during a duel, that can result in the zombie threat level increasing. You can run out of bullets. You may even injure an ally. There is an optional table to use. It's small. Kind of give you ideas of like what happens. Uh, Messing up is supposed to be though a sort of discussion between the game master and the player about like what happens. Again, you're rolling dice and then interpreting the results. It's not like D&D where it's like, oh, you hit, you did some damage, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay, so brawls, we actually have a combat round, and it's used for multiple combatants and intense combat. Looks like I had a typo in there. Anyway, there's always one, folks. There's always one. But the combat round, everyone gets an action and one skill roll, essentially associated with that action. Quick actions don't count, like drawing a knife, picking up a gun, that kind of thing. But there's 6 phases to the brawl: taking cover, range combat, close combat, movement, first aid, and then other actions go last. So keep that in mind. Okay. Taking cover. Everybody makes a mobility roll. And on a success, they've found cover. They've dived behind a dumpster. They, moved around to the corner of a building or something, right? And then in step 2, you resolve range combat, very similar to duels. Like two people are target each other first, and then those who are just targeting others who are not targeting them go last. Um, but again, those are just basic rolls, and you roll and see if you succeed. Now, in this, it's not an opposed roll, though. You're just rolling to see if you hit. And then that might get modified by cover, that sort of thing. Close combat, same thing. Um, but you can only obviously engage close combat when you're dealing with someone in short range. Movement, you can pretty much move from one range band to the next. However, it requires a mobility roll, which is a little odd to me. So if you don't succeed, you didn't move. I guess you have to interpret like why that happened. Maybe the gunfire kept you from going. Um, Maybe you tripped. Maybe the way is blocked. You'll have to figure that out, I guess. And then, of course, you can chase people using an opposed roll. Step 5, you can provide first aid with a medicine check, but you can't give it to yourself. Um, and we'll cover really when first aid applies in a couple of slides here. And then other actions. This could be anything from hot wiring a car, barricading a door, trying to get a radiator to work. The game master will tell you what dice roll you need to make at that time. All right, so damage and healing. You may recall from the last video, you get 3 health points, and that's it. Everyone does. If you're injured, you get 1 point of health each day, so long as you consume a ration. If you don't have food, you're not healing. I like this rule. I like it because there's a cost to recovery, and that adds to that level of tension that a survival horror, I think, needs. You're not going to get a long rest like you do in 5e, right? So I like that. When you're broken, it's when you've lost all your hit points, your health. You're down, you can't really do anything. You roll on this critical damage table, and that can result in death. FYI, 2/3 of it are lethal, okay? And if you're injured again during the scene, you're just dead. This is when you want to have someone apply first aid. basically on a success, you get up with the critical injury and 1 health. All right, and every success beyond the first gives you an additional health point. If no one can give you a medicine check, first aid, the GM will roll a d6, and that is how many rounds it'll take before you can get back up with 1 health, but you'll still have that critical injury. So you're not like out for the rest of the scene. You will come back. And then, of course, if you're wearing armor, you roll whenever you're attacked and hit. You roll on the armor the a number of dice equal to the armor rank, and for every success, reduces damage by 1. It's very standard with like free league stuff. The critical injury table. It's pretty exhaustive. It's interesting, and it has a description. It says whether the injury is lethal or not, whether there's a time limit associated with recovery or avoid death, a penalty associated with it, and then yes, the recovery time. So the penalty applies for all dice pools that you will use during the recovery time. Okay. Um, the time limit is for lethal injuries and how much time you have until you're stabilized. What's interesting here is that the time limit will also tell you what kind of medical equipment you need. So if you only have basic medical equipment and you need something more advanced like a supply of blood or an operating table, there is nothing that can be done. Um, Recovery time is based on a die roll that's secret, and it can the recovery time can be reduced with successes on a medicine check if you have someone sort of monitoring the injured party, right? But you do need basic medical gear. Okay, and then of course messing up when stabilizing someone can result in the loss of medical gear, the doubling of recovery time, or a permanent penalty, right? So that injury you took in the gunfight might travel with you for the rest of the campaign. Oh, that's a double. Okay, so there's a ton of rules related to other hazards and gear. I'm not going to go into an exhaustive explanation of all of them. Just know that there's basically they all operate roughly the same. Explosions, poisons, fire, disease, traps, and all that will have some sort of rank associated with them, and that's how many dice you're going to roll to see how much damage they do or the effects they have. Um, and it's pretty similar to other free league games I've seen. The rules for this. I did want to bring up Hungry and Tired though because I liked what they did here. You have to consume a ration every day when traveling outside the haven. If you don't, you start to starve, and you must make an endure roll. And endure is a skill under the strength attribute. If you fail, you take a point of stress. Okay, and this will not be relieved until you have 2 rations. Okay. If you accumulate 5 or more stress this way, you start taking damage, and if you continue to starve, you don't take any more stress, you just start taking damage. You're dying. I really like this. It means going out on runs is not going to be easy. Leaving your haven is dangerous, right? Again, gear covers the type of bonuses you get when using the particular item. What is really interesting and I like is that items can break, and this can be the result from messing up on a skill roll because you rolled a 1 on your stress die, or as a challenge by the game master. Again, fiat, just like, well, I think it makes sense for the story that your car's broken down, so your car's broken down. Again, you might not like that sort of thing, but the rules do give the game master a lot of narrative control over the players in this game. Okay. I wanted to highlight ammunition too, because a loss of ammunition can result from, shooting your gun using ranged combat skill and messing up. Or again, the game master can announce it's a challenge and just say, "Oh, nope, you're out of ammunition today, guys. You're gonna have to go find like an outdoor store, a hunting store, or something to find bullets or whatever, or scavenge bullets from dead bodies or something." So there are some interesting rules for vehicles. They have stats, but again, this is very abstract. And I'm actually kind of thankful for it. I don't know if I could stand like a bunch of crunchy vehicle rules for a game like this, but basically, using a vehicle requires a mobility check, and the vehicle will have a bonus to the roll depending on what kind of vehicle it is. Vehicle also has listed the amount of damage the vehicle can dish out if you ram someone or something with it. It has hull points until it becomes critically damaged, and then an armor rating, okay, for itself and for occupants in the vehicle if someone's trying to shoot at them or something. You can run out of fuel by messing up on your mobility check, or you guessed it, GM decides to announce a challenge. Uh, yeah, you know, maybe it's your thing. I don't know. In combat, vehicles can pretty much move across the board. There's really no limit. And then when ramming, you have to make this mobility check. And if you mess up, you crash. And then there's this random table that kind of determine what you crashed into and how much the vehicle takes. The vehicle always takes 1 point of hull damage. Okay. And then, like I mentioned, they can take critical damage. There's a chart. It's not as big as the critical injury chart, but you know, you could trash your vehicle. And then, of course, you can repair vehicles, which in and of itself could be considered a challenge. Like, which is the reason why my first session went the way it did. They started the game with two vehicles, and I rolled on a chart to see their relative, you know, quality, and both of them rolled poorly. Like they're two broken down vehicles, so they decided to go to a Napa auto parts store to try to scavenge some stuff and you know, fix the vehicles. And in the store, they found I rolled randomly and found that there was a pack of wild dogs in there that caused a fight, a brawl, and then which in turn attracted a bunch of zombies, and things went to hell for them after that. Um, all right, so fighting the dead, probably what everyone's been waiting for. This is actually one of my favorite parts of this game. I think it's brilliant, actually. It's a great way to handle a post apocalyptic survival horror game with zombies. They are an ever present threat and they're treated like an environmental hazard, not like an antagonist. So you're not going to be rolling to hit zombie A who takes that 2 hit points and then, you know, no, it's just a very abstract way of dealing with them like some sort of environmental hazard. And it's just like in the television show. I think that it's awesome. So basically, walkers, they don't have stats. They have a threat level that goes from 0 to 6, and a size level that goes from 1 to 6. A size level 1 is anything, a group of zombies up to like 5 to 10, while size level 6 will be a swarm of over 1,000. Okay. Uh, the threat meter is recommended for use, so players can actually see, and I think that'll add some tension to your games. Okay, but it goes from 0 to 6, and that lets the party know the size and how close, but more importantly, how close the zombies are. Um, and the GM basically determines the threat level. And the threat level can increase when the players mess up, failing a skill roll to avoid walkers, facing a group of walkers that were placed on the area map, which I'll cover in the next video, right? Or doing something else, right, that might attract the walkers. The GM can and does have the discretion to not increase the threat level if it doesn't make any sense, by having the zombies make like a single attack or increasing the swarm size or something. So, fighting the dead, there's like two ways of doing this. If there's a smaller group, like levels 1 and 2, where they're not really aware of you, you can simply try to sneak by them or use a mobility roll to avoid them. On a failure, the threat level goes up, or there's a single attack. You can disguise yourself as the undead, but you may need to make several stealth successes to do so. By disguising yourself, you're covering yourself in gore and moving through the herd. Um, if you fail, though, the threat level jumps to 5 because they're right in front of you and surrounding you, right? To reduce the threat level, for at levels 1 and 2, all you can wait for them to leave, or you can clear the area out, and I'll cover that later. At level 3 and up, they won't leave. You need to use some kind of distraction. When there's a single walker attack, basically the player decides what skill they're going to use. Okay, I have down at the bottom of this slide here some examples. Like they decide to stab the walker with the knife, and then close combat skill, or um, they're just going to try to hide, and so that would be stealth, right? Um, you can determine using a double low 2d6 and keep the lotus. How many zombies are there making the single attack? It doesn't matter mechanically, but if the roll succeeds, the PC is not injured. Okay, they've hidden from them, they've killed them, or in some other way stopped them. On a failure, you roll a d66 and consult the walker attack chart, which can result anywhere from a minor injury to additional stress or even bitten or outright killed. So it's no joke, right? That roll on the single walker for the single walker attack can be aided by another, and this can happen during combat rounds. Okay, so but making the roll to avoid the attack won't use up your action during a firefight with a rival gang or something. Okay. Um, Now, then there's the swarm. Okay, if the party is dealing with the swarm, which is a threat level 3 or greater, um, you basically goes into combat rounds, and each round they have to roll three PCs are selected to make skill rolls, and those skill rolls are determined by the threat level. And if they get a number of successes equal to the threat level, um, they've won the round. Now, if it's a size 3 swarm, the party wins and the threat level is immediately reduced. Okay, they made it out. If the swarm, though, is higher than a 3 in terms of size, the swarm size is reduced, and there's still another round of combat until they get to that point where they just automatically win and it's done. You got to remember, threat and swarm size are different. I got confused my very first time playing. I thought they were one and the same. Um, so if you got two players who are dealing with this, they have to still make those three rolls though. So someone's got to roll twice. Okay. Um, what I think is cool is that someone with the leadership skill can basically jump in and say, I'm going to make a roll, and he starts giving commands and words of encouragement, and for every success he gets, he can hand them to divide them up to the three players who are going to make rolls, and they get extra dice. I love that. I think that's awesome. Um, okay, so but if you lose the combat round with the swarm, the threat level increases by one step. The swarm size may increase by one step, or the swarm attacks. And you can see there's a list of the types of attacks the swarm can make. If you've made at least half the number of successes to succeed but still failed, the next round you get one free extra dice to add to your pool. So you've made some ground, you've made some advancement to try to get rid of these guys. Okay, when the swarm attacks, it can make a single attack on a random PC, just like what I described earlier. The swarm may block off all escape routes unless the fight is won. And anyone using mobility or stealth checks for this still skills to fight the walkers needs an additional success to succeed. There may be a mass attack, which is an immediate roll on the attack table, which means it's just an automatic damage to some random PC. What is interesting, and I love this too, PCs can sacrifice another at the start of the round by making opposing force rolls. If you win, you are out of the fight, but the victim rolls on the walker attack table. If you fail, you roll on the table. But this will count as one of your successes. So it's a guaranteed success, if you think about it. But sacrificing yourself, well, you're not sacrificing yourself, but sacrificing a member of the party. Some final things about fighting the dead. Amputation. You can amputate a limb to avoid the effects of a bite. This requires a medicine roll, but the bitten person and the person performing the operation take a point of stress. The amputee automatically gets the severed limb critical injury, but without the lethality quality from the critical injury table, unless the roll is failed, then it is lethal. You can have brawls with walkers, and it's not really like you're brawling with them, but you have like maybe a gunfight going on between you and a rival gang, and then there's a swarm. Facing the swarm and making those rolls to get out of the swarm happens at phase six, the other. So gunfire, movement, this, that, and the other thing. And then finally, everyone's like, okay, we're going to try to sneak away or whatever. Um, and clearing out an area. Works just like fighting a swarm, but you do not gain any stress like you would when you see like a threat level 3. However, if you fail, the threat level goes up to 3. And if ranged combat is being used, or threat level 5 if you decided to go in and stab using melee combat. So, like the swarms, you're gonna just decide what you're gonna do to clear out the area. How fight, shoot, stab, and you just need a number of successes equal to either level 1 or level 2 to succeed. If you fail, things just got bad for you. So, that's it for today. Next week I'll start looking into how the campaign is run, how challenges are kind of generated, and how the campaign map is generated, along with like NPCs, swarms, and other things like that. It's an interesting aspect to the book, and I like it. So anyway, everyone, thanks for watching. If this is something that you like, please hit like and subscribe and the bell icon. I would appreciate it. And happy gaming.